Good afternoon, everyone. Well,
Hey, what's up? Thank you guys for coming out on an afternoon.
Yeah.
Beautiful day in LA. Come watch the little horror movie, the 8th episode of it.
I'm afraid you're going to have to leave because I have to do an intro, and so you can make an entrance.
Oh, me? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So,
Turn my head, and then
obviously,
they'll be surprised. Yes.
As you all know, we are welcoming the actor who plays Chief Jim Hopper on Stranger Things here. Among his many, many credits, he's appeared in the films Revolutionary Road and The Equalizer, and of course, he's a SAG Award winner as a member of the Stranger Things Ensemble.
Woo!
And he just received his first Emmy nomination for his role and for Best Supporting Actor in a Drama. Please again welcome David Harbour.
Thank you, guys.
So this is an audience of SAG actors, so I actually have
Yay.
two SAG-related
I love
questions.
actors. And we're like the best, and we're also the worst.
The worst.
Room full of narcissists, but like the best people too. Like I love actors.
The best narcissists.
I really do.
Well, how did you get your SAG card? What was the first thing you did?
Wow, that's a good question. Let's see. I got my equity card first. I did plays and stuff, and then I think my SAG card. I think I got my AFTRA card first because I think they were split at that point. Because I did soaps, so I did As the World Turns, and I think I had to join AFTRA. I was a day player on As the World Turns, where I was an officer, so my career is not. I was an officer of the law, a little less, even less capable though than Jim Hopper. He was the beautiful ladies of Oakdale, who were also horrible women and would, kill people and stuff. And so Officer Ron Shanks.
Shanks?
Yes, Ron Shanks. Yes, he would be manipulated by their beauty and charm, and would unwittingly let them out of prison. Just randomly.
Just open the door?
Yeah, sort of give them the keys and sort of thing. And he never lost his job. He still maintained his position in the police department for a solid 4 years. Yeah.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Did you get written off when you left, or could he still be there?
He could come back. Yeah, As the World Turns is gone, but he could. Yeah, we'd have to revamp the entire show, but yeah, he could come back. I think he's off in Mexico doing like DEA work or something. Yeah,
Oh, he got promoted.
Yeah. He would go, because I would do plays in New York, so he would kind of go off like for months and months and then come back. And I always created some kind of massive backstory about him going and like being undercover in Oakdale bike gangs that are running guns or something, and then coming back to the police station. But so I got my AFTRA card with that, and then I think my SAG card was my first episode of Law and Order, the original Law and Order. It was with Jerry Orbach was the lead detective, and Jesse Martin had just come on. I think it was his first year, and I played Mike the waiter. And Mike had 4 lines, I believe, and I remember, it's so funny, Law and Order is such an amazing thing because whenever the cops come to question you in Law and Order, you just have no time. You just are always like busy. And if the cops ever came and questioned me, I'd be like, yeah, let's talk. Like, I don't have to. But Mike was very concerned about getting back to work at his waiting job. And he was asked if he remembered a gentleman who came in, and he said, no, I don't remember him. I noticed the ladies. So Mike's character defining trait was that he was kind of a lech. So again, the career hasn't moved much. But that was my SAG card. I had to join for that day player role, and I was like, I think a guest star or something on Law and Order. So that was my first SAG.
Was that your only Law and Order? Because I know a lot of people go back to the different Law and Order.
Yeah, no, I've done it 6 or 7 times.
Did you ever do it? Were you ever the killer?
Oh, always. Yeah, I've killed so many people in Manhattan. It's extraordinary. The great thing about Law and Order is it's almost like a rep ensemble company, like, because you could be a killer, and then 2 years later, because of the pool in New York, they would reuse you as a totally different killer, like completely non-contiguous and just like, yeah, whatever, you're just a new guy. So we all, like a bunch of us in New York, like, guys that came up with like Corey Stoll and like Garrett Dillahunt and like, Sarah Paulson, like we've all been on Law and Order like multiple times, like killing so many people or being lawyers prosecuting those people. Yeah.
What was your favorite murder?
My favorite murder. There was a great There was a great episode, and it's so funny. You know what's funny related back to Stranger Things is Winona is obsessed with Law and Order.
Really?
She's obsessed with Law and Order. And I remember upon first working with her, her biggest, like I've done some work. And she was like, oh my God, the silver thief from Criminal Intent. Like she was just blown away. And she occasionally still sends me like little videos when she catches it on late night TNT or whatever of me like with Detective Gorin, like being kind of a jerk.
The silver killer?
He was like a silver thief. Like he was a master thief. I remember Vincent D'Onofrio had to say that line, and he didn't seem pleased about having to say it. He said something about your profession. I was like, what's my profession? He was like, master thief. And so he would steal silver or something, but my girlfriend at the time was the murderer in that. The red herring was that I was the murderer, but actually Callie Thorne, who's another great actress, yes, she played my girlfriend in that, and she was off killing people. But yeah, the silver thief episode was a really pivotal moment in my career, yes.
Obviously memorable if Winona remembers all these.
Yeah, no, it was great. I actually, pre-Stranger Things, I used to get recognized most of all for, I did an episode of SVU called Dolls, where I played a horrible man who killed young women, like little girls, and would mummify them. And he was obsessed with dolls. And so the way they catch him is he had a new doll coming into the doll shop. And they were like, call the guy and have him come in. And I come in and I'm like, this isn't the doll that I wanted. And then I go home. But I had a really, and Gloria Rubin was the mother of one of the victims, and I had a real standoff with her. And he was like a sick, weird guy, but he also I seek to understand all sorts of people. So, I try to understand his point of view, and I think people were really weirded out by me, but they also recognized me from that. Everyone, when I'd be in New York, I'd get recognized like maybe once every couple months or something. Someone would be like, hey, you're on TV. And they'd be like, oh man, Dolls, you're such a weirdo. And I was like, yeah, that's me. I am. You have no idea.
I'm actually curious because you're one of those actors who's been working for a while and you're always great and everything, but how has your career shifted since Stranger Things? Because this thing is a crazy phenomenon. Do people now say Dolls then Jim Hopper?
Yeah, they leave out Dolls now.
Thank God, right?
My first name has become Stranger. It's just Stranger Things. So yeah, it's shifted dramatically. Like this show, really, I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of movies and done lots of TV and stuff. But this has been such a zeitgeist, and people love it so much. And it's so gratifying that you're not recognized as sort of a celebrity or somebody famous. Like they've really people that have been moved by the show, and they see you and they're just like very moved by the work. And so yeah, it's. In the public profile, it's changed my career dramatically, and then certainly in the career, it's changed my career because I was never sort of given an opportunity to play like a leading man in a series or a movie. On stage I had done it, but I was never given this opportunity. So I think that it sort of opened up a whole new world where the industry has been like, yeah, maybe David Harbour can play a leading guy, and we will see. I mean, we will see if that's possible in some future projects. But it has opened that door in a great way. I'm very grateful for, and also I never expected.
Well, I love that you're about to play, the title role in a big action blockbuster, but you're going to be under tons of makeup as Hellboy, aren't you?
I am. Hey, thank you. Yeah.
And I saw Ron Perlman gave you his blessing.
He did, yes. Where are my Ron Perlman haters out there? Come on, there's got to be a couple. No. I mean, it's a weird situation because they did make these two great movies. Yeah. Guillermo del Toro, Ron Perlman, is great, so we're doing something very different. We're not trying to recreate that. Like those things stand alone as they are, and I think we're trying to reimagine it in a different world with a different universe. It's R-rated. It's a little more. It's darker. It's more sort of horror based than the films were a little more, the Guillermo del Toro movies were a little jokier. Not that there isn't humor in this, but it feels darker in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, it's a real new challenge for me. I mean, there is a ton of prosthetics. And I'm learning how to work with that. My face is completely different. And so even if my body is not in shape, by the end of this movie, my facial muscles will be ripped. Like, because you're moving around, you're doing all this stuff with all these prosthetics. But it's also really liberating. Like one of the things I love about acting is sort of, I don't want to be recognized. Like, I just want you to see the character. Like, I think there are some guys who do it really well where you see some of them and you see some of the character. And then I think there are these guys that just get lost. You just get lost. And that's always been my goal, is just like, I just want you guys to see Hopper, Like David Harbour is like, whatever, like he's not as interesting. So I want you to see Hopper. And then like Hellboy, like, yeah, it's a ton of stuff, but it really gives me a whole new feel, and he's a whole new guy, and I think differently when I'm in him, and I move differently. And so I want you to just watch Hellboy, and I want you to feel for Hellboy. And you don't have to give a crap about David Harbour, like whatever. Just know that he's suffering under all this.
So is it true, I heard that shortly before you booked Stranger Things, you were actually thinking about leaving the business or giving up on TV?
That's sort of grown.
I wondered, yeah.
From an initial statement I made that was, I guess what I had felt, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of people feel, like I had done a lot of plays. I've done a lot of plays in New York, and my relationship to the Hollywood television film thing has always been somewhat, I feel like it's an industry and a town that doesn't really take care of you. It's sort of a machine, and it's built on money, and it's built on success. And so I've always been wary of it, because I think the New York theater scene is a little more, even if you're not that great, or even if you're not, we kind of take care of each other a little better, because there's not so much money at stake. And so I think out here there is a whole popularity thing and a whole money thing and this Hollywood thing. So I had grown very cynical about my role in that. And I had always been like number 6 on the call sheet, or number 7, who's like the supporting guy who shows up for like a couple scenes and like does something and like, generally like do a good job. But I'd always treated my relationship to movies and television almost like a business relationship, or like a go to work at a job relationship. And my theater had always been my passion. And so at the time, I had come off a show called State of Affairs that had ended, and I had been up for a bunch of movies, and it was sort of that thing where I'm sure everybody goes through it, where it's like you sort of progress and you get up for a bunch of movies, like good roles, interesting stuff, and it would always go to the other guy, or like, it'd be you and another guy, or you and 2 other guys, and it always went to the other guy. And that happened about like 10 times. And for about 4 months, like I didn't work, and I got really neurotic, and I thought that like I was done, and like nobody was interested in me anymore. And so my plan was, I did have a plan where I thought at one point about going back to school, but I did go back to New York, and I was like, look, I'm just going to do plays, and like, if somebody wants me for something, I'll come out. And then the funny thing is, like, Stranger Things came along out of that. It didn't come, I didn't run after it. It was something where, like, it was something where I was kind of like tired of it, and I was like, yeah, I don't care. And they said, Carmen Cuba has this thing that she's really interested in you for. And I thought, you hear that stuff so much, right? You hear that like, oh, they're so interested in you, and it doesn't mean anything. And I've heard it for 20 years. Like, I really have, where it's like, they're really in, and then you go in and they don't care. But like, I will say, so like, Carmen is very different, and she really was interested in me, and apparently the boys were interested in me too, and they sent me the script, and I went in and read one scene. It was very much on, like, right from there. And it was one of these things where, I don't necessarily believe in, but I do, I feel bad about saying this almost, but like, I do think there are sort of destiny things, like there are sort of things that come at the right time. And this was one of those situations where I had kind of let go and gone like, all right, like whatever, guys. And this thing came along, and then I was like, okay, now I can reinvest. And I went hard, like I worked really hard on this character. and the response and the storytelling itself reinvigorated my belief in the potential of film and television. And I was like, wow, we can tell stories about ordinary people, about people that really like struggle and stuff. Not that we hadn't before, but just that I felt a part of that. And so now I feel like really jazzed to do things like Hellboy, or things that I really believe in, and things where I feel like I have a creative hand in. And it's very liberating. But there was a period of about like 4 to 6 months that was very dark. I don't know about leaving the business, but I was definitely like in a dark place around my place in Hollywood.
And I'm curious, you mentioned that you really prepared for this character, and obviously you've played your share of cops, but what special research did you do for Jim?
It's funny. I went back to acting class. A guy that I had studied with in the past, and then I had taken a break from him for a while, and then I went back to him because I felt like I needed to up my game, and I had grown a bit cynical about my relationship, and so I had to like reinvest. And so most of the work that I did in this is about his psychopathy. I don't know. I use these words, but I don't really know what they mean. I use them interchangeably. Like I use words like psychopathy, psychodynamic, and psychology. But I just like psychopathy because it sounds interesting.
Cool.
It sounds cool, right? So, but I went into like his psyche, and a lot of it is, I did find that a lot of it is layering who this guy is. And one of the things that I talked to about my coach is like, it's interesting to think of a guy who's lost his daughter and then to think of that guy 5 years later. Like, as opposed to just being sad about your daughter, like you have to go shopping. Like, what's that guy like in the grocery store? Like, what's that guy like just walking around his day? And so this idea of a shtick that you develop out of that pain as a result of just sadness or just anger. So the coffee and contemplation and like the whole thing and the like women, the librarian, the whole, like this guy that you meet, was very carefully constructed so that we could break him down and we could see what was really underneath him. And a lot of it related to really personal work about how will functioned for me, how in David Harbour, so that I could bring that to the character, and then how Joyce functioned for me, and how his relationship to addictions functioned, and his pride, and like all this stuff. But it's funny, like I didn't do much work because actors talk sometimes about doing lots of specific work based on like what it's like to be a cop in that era, and I did some of that. But for me, it's much more about personally what invigorates, so that the character stands here and I stand here, and that eventually like my blood and the hair on my arms and my skin can actually respond to an imaginary circumstance. That to me is the ultimate goal, is where your unconscious actually believes that something is happening that isn't happening. So it was really deep personal work that I had to go through. And I had, I went through my share of like darkness with him, and I sort of like lived it a little bit. And that was like really fun.
Really?
Well, it's really fun to go that deep.
Yeah.
Because so often you're asked, and been asked in movies to just come in and just blah, blah. And this gave me an opportunity of 8 hours of like a really great character to just like go there. And since I did feel like I had this cynical relationship, there was this reinvigoration of like, you know what, David, just like go there, like just do it as hard as you can and like see what you can do. And so I did. And I was down in Atlanta and we're shooting, and I was just dark, and I would just like sit in my little place and smoke cigarettes and be depressed and stuff. And like, and there was something about that now that I watch it that reads on the camera. And so I do have a little bit of a weird methody process. I'm not sending dead pigs to people in the mail, but I do
just
have
dolls.
Just dolls,
Yes.
just weird dolls. But I do have a bit of a subconscious process of acting out when I play a character.
But it sounds like you enjoy it. Like, I mean, what happens to Jim in the show, losing his daughter, I think has to be the worst thing that can happen to a person. Yes. But it sounds like on one hand, you sort of enjoyed going to this dark place, but was it ever hard? Like, do you have days where you were like, oh, I made a big mistake?
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things, in terms of constructing the character, one of the things that was really important to me is this idea of, I think sometimes there's, one of the things, and it's really important to me in episode 8 specifically, is like, I didn't want any of that stuff to be sentimental, and it's a really fine line that you're writing, because you're playing a guy who's lost his daughter to cancer, right? So there can be a lachrymose kind of saccharine quality to this struggle, and I really wanted it to feel stark, and I really wanted it to feel unanswerable, so that even as he saves Will, you know that he's reawoken, but he hasn't solved that problem. And I think there are certain problems in this world, or certain things that happen to you that are game changers that don't get solved with however better you feel about yourself, or however, make yourself feel better, man. Like, come on, do something nice. And I think there are these things that are real realities of life. And so I wanted that to resonate with him, that there is this reality of this lost child that he will never, even if he feels better, and even as you'll see in season 2,
yes, tell us about season 2.
So I'll go right from the beginning. So this is what happens in the first 5 minutes. No, I mean, his journey in season 2 is very different, but it all is still linked to this guy. Like, I still wanted it to be very connected to this guy who has this unanswerable question, which is that he's a man who defines the world as right and wrong. He's a police chief. He's an officer. He was an officer somewhere else. He believes in that philosophy of life, of justice, of like, there's a bad guy and there's a good guy. And then he meets with a situation where his daughter gets cancer and there's no bad guy to fight. There's no way to solve that problem. And in a weird film noir way, the only bad guy in the situation is him. Like, it's his genetics that caused this. It's his DNA that allowed for this life to happen, and also has somehow, maybe he thinks he has some guilt about that. So the bad guy is him. And that was really kind of amazing. So that guy is still very present. Like, he's different now because he saved Will, because he has this sort of savior thing, and he has this whole different element to him. But there is this undercurrent of he's still that guy, and you'll see that guy come out, and it's cool. Like, it's really fun to play those different dynamics. Like in Jaws, for example, right? It's like the guy is afraid of the water, and like, of course he has to go out on the boat and like confront the shark, right? And so for Hopper, he's afraid of not being able to save a child that like was not able to be saved. And in fact, this guy has to go down to an alternate reality to save a child. Like, he has to go to a fantasy world to save a child. I mean, it is the ocean in Jaws. It is this world of, unimaginable mystery. And so, yeah, it's super cool.
Was it fairly easy to get into the part of the character who's like sort of in love with Winona Ryder? Because I have to imagine if you grew up with her.
Yeah. She Heathers and Beetlejuice and like, yeah, right? I mean, she's like amazing. Like, yeah. And so even upon meeting her, I'm revealing something. But yeah, even upon meeting her, it was like, she's so beautiful and so wonderful. And she's also just like a true pro. And she's very vulnerable and very personal in all of her dealings. And so you don't often meet that. Like, when you work in this industry, you work with a lot of actors, but she just shows up like an open thing. And I think she's working all the time too, like I am too, where you're trying to find these things about another human being that's going to be as much about David and Winona as it is about Hopper and Joyce. And so subconsciously you're trying to steer this and like work it a little bit, and orchestrate it a little bit. And I think that we did have these moments of true frustration with each other, which you can see throughout the series. And then we did have these moments of deep, like, I have deep, deep affection for her, and sort of a deep love for her. All right, relax. She's got a boyfriend. But yeah, I do have like a deep love for and respect for her, and that was so easy because it was her. And I can't imagine now looking at it and thinking about, as we work in the season, I can't imagine it being anyone else. Like, there always are situations where you're in, there's tons of us on lists. I mean, there were guys, I'm sure, for Hopper that weren't me, but the alchemy between us is so specific that it's such a gift.
Was she cast already when you were cast, or at what point did you find out?
I think it was very close. Like, we came on board kind of at the same time. It was the two of us were the first people. And it was kind of at the same time. She might have come on a day earlier, or like I came on, and we actually went out, the Duffers, because I went out to LA because I wanted to meet with the writer's room, and I met with the writer's room before they'd written all the episodes, and I came up with certain ideas that I wanted to throw in there. Yeah, and I had my input, and that was great, and we talked about the way it was going so I could figure out what to work on. And then she was out there too, and so we all had dinner at like Chateau. Like we went out one night, and like me and Winona were like huddled in the corner just like talking for like hours, and that was when I started to realize, I was like, oh, this working relationship is going to be really special, because like I do feel like I can go to places with this human being that I can't always go to with co-stars.
And they say never work with animals or children, but it's
Yes.
worked out pretty well for you.
Oh.
Do they ever like ask you for advice or?
I give it. No,
You do?
I don't
good,
know
good.
that. They were, you know, and what's funny is like the first season, again, as I say, using that subconscious process, the first season, I wanted distance from them, you know, like, because he is a guy who's uncomfortable around children. And also, I wanted them to feel uncomfortable around him.
Just show them all Law and Order.
Yeah, exactly. I could show them that, yeah. But just in general, I just was like, I had a bit of a relationship where I stayed away from them, and they all, you know, so the scenes between us, like there's a great scene in the first episode where he goes to visit, and he's like asking them about the thing. It's like really a weird, great scene, and it's because I sort of played that out a little bit, I think. And then as the season went on, and then as even now into season 2, there's just none of that anymore. Like we're just friends, and like we just hug and everything. And I miss those days when they didn't like me and were scared of me, but those are gone. So they're, you know, I have but I do have like a fatherly protective feeling for them, because they're such great little artists, and I'm just worried that, like, you know, you throw all this attention on them, and already, like, you know, them going around the world and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, even me at 42, it's hard on the psyche to deal with all that pressure of what people want from you, and still to be able to do what you do that got you there. And so I just worry about their little psyches. And so I sort of do function at this place on set and in their lives as this guy who's not very impressed. So, because I think they need that.
Yeah.
Because they have so many people that are constantly impressed with them, as I am too. But I think they need like a guy who's like, whatever, kid, like you're just a child. Like, when the adults are talking, please sit, you know. So I do a little bit of that.
We have a couple questions from the audience.
Cool.
This one's from Denny. Wants to know, you might have answered this, but what was your favorite scene in season 1 and why?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. I have so many favorite scenes. I really love the whole piece so much. That's a really hard question. I mean, I love, like, shooting-wise, there's a scene in episode 5 where I rip apart my trailer looking for this bug, this listening device. And that was super fun to shoot, because they just, like, had a steady cam, and they went around with me, and I ripped apart the trailer. I just ripped everything apart, and you'll see, like, there's saliva dripping out of and they were just following me around the room while I went crazy. That was a really fun scene. I also really like a scene with my fellow actor here in the front row. That we have in episode 4, where we're at a bar, and he lies about his daughter winning a spelling bee to get some information from this character O'Bannon, and then he winds up going out and beating the crap out of him. But I really like those moments of Hopper when he lies about having a daughter. It happens in the first episode as well, when the science teacher confronts him about it, and he says, like, oh yeah, she lives with her mom. And then it happens in this where he brings her up, and then O'Bannon asks, what's her name? And he takes this moment where he says, Sarah, name's Sarah. And these moments where he uses his daughter in this weird way as kind of fuel to hunt something. It's really interesting. So, yeah, a lot of things, but it's a terrible answer. I'm sorry for whoever. It's like the worst answer.
We have a question from Carmen. Oh, right there in the front. Wants to know, what do you know about acting now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your career?
Wow, that's another great question. I'm gonna have a terrible answer for. What I wish I knew about acting that I know now. Okay, this is good. When I was younger, I think that the reason why we fall in love, and this has been my trajectory, not everybody's trajectory, but like when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I was really interested in impressing people, and I was really interested in being handsome, and really interested in being photogenic, and really interested in like charming and all these things. And I think that what I've learned throughout the process is the reason why we fall in love with people, or the reason why we fall in love with actors as well, is that they're willing to reveal those things that are uncomfortable and that are embarrassing, and that are because we all have those things in our lives. We are egotistical, we're arrogant, we're sad, we're happy, we're too much, we're too little. And so I would embrace those things about yourself that you're embarrassed about, as opposed to trying to hide those things in auditions and stuff like that. And I wish I had embraced those things about myself earlier. Because even like, in terms of this, like, I take my shirt off in that first scene, and like, I don't have a TV body. Like those dudes you see on TV, and you're like, oh my God, he does so many sit-ups. And I was trying to do that for years. And then finally I got this show, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna kind of let it hang out. And there's a real, you can love Hopper as a result of that, as opposed to it being this armor of someone who's like, and so I would embrace those things that you're embarrassed about yourself, and bring those to auditions, bring those to your work. Thanks. That wasn't as bad of an answer as the what scene is your favorite, but it was, yeah, okay.
A question from @StrangerThingsFan988.
Twitter handle. What's up, Twitter handle? Red Hat.
Was 1 through 987 taken? Wants to know, has coming from a theater background informed your work on screen?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's one of the things where, we get to play. I would encourage everybody to do plays, because you get to play and you get to be broader than you think you can. I think a lot of the dangers of television acting, especially nowadays, as we've turned it into coverage, is that it's like, and even casting directors and directors, they're like, in the eyes, just show me the eyes, and like, like I want to see his, and I'm like, that's okay for like an ECU of like one specific moment, but in general, like, doing things that I do in this, like, those come from theater, like the expressivity of using your whole body in a movie, as opposed to I remember I worked with a very famous actor who's a really good film actor, but he was behind on his coverage. He would do this gesture where he would just do like this as it was his coverage. He would just go like, listen, like, da-da-da-da. And I was like, whoa, like that would never fly on stage. And if you go into a wide, like, the director might want to use a wide shot where it'd be really cool to see you just, use your body in a way that like you understand how to do on stage, and it'll give the director a better option. But with that type of limitation, he's just going to use the coverage. So using your full body, your full instrument, and letting your instrument resonate in bigger ways and in bolder choices, and like make mistakes. Like in theater too, you can make tons of mistakes, but when you get that big film job, you don't want to make mistakes. Like all these people are waiting on your money, but you do an off-Broadway play and like, make tons of mistakes. You got rehearsal, you got all this stuff. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to not be successful young and to like do crappy, mediocre plays for a lot of your career, because you'll learn how to act and how to be good.
We have a question from Rena. I think, is it pronounced Rena or Rena? Wants to know how you balance the personal and the business side of acting.
I don't do it very well. I'm pretty much like a singular-minded guy. Like my career comes first, and my passion for acting has always been my primary motivating factor. I consider it my raison d'etre or whatever. Like it's what I want to do all the time. I would want, if I could work 24 hours straight and just be constantly, it's my favorite time of being. It's my favorite. I feel like I actually live when I do a play or a movie. And I feel like when I'm just walking around and talking to people, I feel like kind of like comatose. But I feel like when I get to act, I really get to live. And so I love it. And, I'm trying to balance it more and more as I get older, because I may want some other things in my life, like, stable relationship, things like that people have that I don't understand. I actually don't have any advice on how to balance that. My whole thing has been, I just love what I do so much, and I'm so honored and grateful to be able to do it, that even if I had nothing else in my life, but I was able to act for you, like in movies and in plays, it's a dream life, and I don't really need anything else.
This is a practical question that I really want to know the answer to.
Don't applaud that. That's horrible.
They're like, yeah, we're lonely too.
I know, exactly, yeah. Join the club. Embrace those things that are embarrassing about yourself.
It's a question from Finn. Wants to know, how do you cope with nerves before a difficult scene?
That's a great question. Wow, these are really good
I know,
questions.
right?
Wow,
Really...
these are really great questions. Okay, I actually do. Something with that is Lee Strasberg, the method. I do basic relaxation, which is like really important, and sometimes I forget to do it, and I can see it in my work when I forget to do it. But I do a series of movements, which you can read about from Lee Strasberg. But also a lot of it is really centering yourself and breathing and feeling sensations in your body. Because if you want to feel something different, the first thing you have to do is feel where you're at. There was I think it was like Magic Johnson who said, like, when I'm playing basketball, like when I want to change the game, I have to enter the game at the speed the game is being played and then work to change it. So for example, if I have a love scene where I need to be passionately in love with someone, if it's going to be fake, I'm just going to sort of do it. But if it's going to be real, I'm going to relax and go like, okay, right now, like, I'm tired, my ears feel a little weird, there's tension in my neck, I'm kind of sad, like, I'm not breathing very deeply, and then you start to analyze those things, you start to get a deeper breath, and then you're able to do sensory work to be able to put you in a place to create something different. But relaxation is more important than sensory work, and in terms of acting, it's more important than anything. Like relaxing your body before you do a scene to allow yourself to express something that you may not know is there, and to allow yourself the freedom to do that is all relaxation. So whoever asked that question, you're already like so ahead of the game, like acting wise. Like, awesome question, because relaxation is the key.
Is there a specific, you mentioned Strasberg, is it like if we wanted to Google it, for example, would it be Strasberg relaxation?
Yeah, Lee Strasberg created the Actors Studio, and he has a technique that uses sensory work and also uses something called basic relaxation. Basic relaxation is basically just like, you're in a chair just like this, and you just start breathing and relaxing your body, and starting to be aware of your breath and aware of your body. And then there are a series of movements, one of which is just like rolling your neck around and noticing areas of tension in your neck, and then doing these movements with your and these movements with your legs. And then when you feel an emotion come up, to express it in a long, even sound, or to express it sometimes in an explosive sound if you have something called internal tension, which is like, if I express a sound that like wavers, you might notice that you have esophageal tension or tensions in the stomach. And then sometimes those have to be relaxed by something called a short explosive sound, where you jolt the body into relaxing further. So yeah, but you can look up Lee Strasberg. He wrote a book called Dream of Passion, which is a very good book about his work, and he talks about relaxation in that. You can also see videos, I'm sure, online of him doing this work with people. And this is the acting that Al Pacino has come from. This is the acting that the great New York studio acting of the 60s and 70s that I find, like, to me, it's the best acting. So I wanted to figure out the techniques that they use.
Well, I really want to thank you, not just for that, but for being here today.
Thanks. My
I want to thank
pleasure.
you guys for being a great audience. And again, congratulations on a fantastic
Thank you.
show. Oh, thank you guys so much.